Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and today we have week 6 of my 12 Weeks of Christmas series, so let's jump right in. So as usual, I'm going to cut down my cardstock. It is just my preference, and I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch off of these HammerMill panels. They are the size of the base, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5 when scored. And I'm also going to cut a black mat. Now again, as I always tell you guys, if you don't like the layers, you can totally skip this step. I would still cut the panel down so you'd have a bit of a white layer behind, but the black mat is of course optional, or you could go in with a glitter one if you wanted to. I wanted the black to help with the sentiment. It just kind of helps the black sentiment pop a little bit, but there is no right or wrong here. Create what makes you smile. Now, if you've been with me for any length of time, you will know that I love alcohol inks. I love snowflakes, so you are not surprised at all by this card design. And I hope you guys aren't tired of snowflakes. As I say to you, always do what makes you smile. So I follow that footstep, and I love to create snowflake and alcohol inks, so it's always a little funny. So I have some Yupo here. This is the same Yupo that creates the Tim Holtz line. It's just in a different size, so any Yupo would work if it's from the Yupo brand. I'm going to cut it down to 5.5 by 7. It comes in a 7 by 7 square. And I've cut it down to 5.5. And then I'm going to bring out 4 colors of alcohol ink. I need to use blending solution in this simply because I am going to use a pearl here. This is Villainous. It is a pearl alcohol ink, and you do have to use blending solution with pearls. You could skip using it with any of the inks if you really wanted to. I prefer it though. I find I get better movement with the blending solution than with ISO, and that's just isopropyl alcohol. I just find that I get better movement from blending solution. So it is definitely my preference. But like I said, if you're only working with alcohol inks, you can absolutely just use ISO, skip the blending solution, and have, a really beautiful background. But if you're going to bring in a pearl, because of the mica, you have to use blending solution in it. So keep that in mind if you're having any issues with your alcohol inks. Now, I get a lot of questions as to why I prefer Yupo. And honestly, it just gives me the best movement in my alcohol inks. You can absolutely use any non-porous surface. You could work on glass, you can work on like glossy papers, but Yupo, I've tried other papers and I always come back to Yupo. It is just my favorite. There's, no rhyme or reason. I just work with the materials that I prefer, and you need to try what works best for you. I do get a lot of questions that are something like, well, what if I used this, or what if I did that, or what if I, and the problem is because I haven't done that, it's difficult for me to answer the question. Not that I won't try. I got a lot of questions in my trees, like, if you don't like glitter, what could you do differently? And I can brainstorm ideas with you, but because I've never done it, I have to it's me guessing, right? So you should bust out and play what you have on hand, like I always suggest, and see what comes of it, and be okay if it's not exactly what you were hoping for. A lot of creating is just having fun and playing with your materials. So give it a go and tell me about it. If you try something and it worked for you, tell me, because I do get a lot of questions, and sometimes maybe that would help me be able to answer somebody else, and I can be like, oh, well, I know someone who tried this, that might work for you. So feel free to always share what worked for you with me if you have a different way to do something. Now, for my colors, I used Cosmopolitan, Juniper, and Bayou. I'm pretty sure it's Bayou, with my Villainous, and that's just kind of how I created my background. And I'm splattering on some ISO. I just keep it in a little bottle there, and I keep it on hand because I do use it on occasion with my alcohol inks, but generally I usually use it just for splatter. And then I am going to add more splatter because I love texture. You could absolutely skip this step if splatter is not your thing, but I love how splatter looks on backgrounds. I find it just breaks it up a little more, adds a little more interest. And because we're going to cut these down, the interest is like even more useful, I think, because it draws your eye around a bit. This is not going to stay as a large panel. I am going to cut it down for the card fronts, which you would have seen in the image in the thumbnail. I'm also going to splatter on some black. I almost didn't do this because I don't associate black to Christmas as a general rule when I'm creating my Christmas cards. However, it's so like you barely see it. It's so minuscule on the background that I added it because I like it. But like I said, you can absolutely skip that. Now I'm going to bring in my favorite snowflake. You guys have seen this a million times in my videos now, and I'm cutting it out of white glitter cardstock. I brought in my chrome base plate for this simply because I find this glitter cardstock doesn't like to cut through all the way, and then I really struggle to get those detailed pieces out, and it starts ripping the glitter away from the actual base of the cardstock. So it's easier to bring in that chrome base plate, and it is actually smaller than the switches plates that come with it. If you have a switch, you will have known that your plates are quite large. I don't actually use those plates very often. I find it difficult to have the room around, because you have to have so much room for it to go in and then come out the other side, that I don't actually use the plates that come with the switch. This chrome base plate is actually for the Big Shot, the manual one, and I just use it in my switch because I've found a sandwich that works. So keep that in mind, but be careful, and you'll have to do a couple of trial and errors on what you need for your machine, because of course every sandwich is a little bit different. I do have 2 cardstock shims that go through my machine with my plates, so you will have to kind of discover what sandwich you need, but that is the chrome base plate I like to use with detail dies. Now you can see I'm poking them all out, and they actually poked out beautifully here because I used that chrome base plate. I tend to struggle with this glitter cardstock. I love it because it's actually white glitter. I find a lot of white glitter cardstocks are either pink or blue, and that's not what I want. I want white glitter. So I love this cardstock, but it's a really big pain to die cut sometimes when it's really intricate. So the chrome base plate really helps with that. And I don't link to this exact white cardstock in my description, only because I haven't found a store you can buy it from. As soon as I do, I will, link to that. But I actually link to the Simon Says Stamp white glitter cardstock because I have that as well, and it is my second favorite. So something to keep in mind. It is a little bit pink, which sometimes I like, just depends on what I'm using it for. But this actual white glitter cardstock, I haven't found it anywhere that I can link to. My local store brings it in. I don't even know where they get it from. So I just use what I can find. So for my 4 cards, I knew I was doing 4 cards, and I knew that I wanted 2 1/2-inch strips and a 3/4-inch strip. And now I'm going to make these measurements difficult because that's what I do, but I've cut them down to 1 3/4. So I have 4 of 1 3/4 because that makes 7 when you times it by 4. And then I'm going to cut 1 strip at a 1/4 inch, or sorry, a 1/2 inch, 1 strip at 3/4 of an inch, and then that leaves me the other 1/2 inch strip. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. There's no right or wrong though. If you want to make this easier, do 3 1/2 inch strips, or do 3/4 inch strips. You just have to change the size of your Yupo for that, of course. But there's no right or wrong. If you only have leftovers, cut those down to what you need and don't do one long alcohol inked piece. I like how it looks, so I tend towards that, but it's not necessary, especially if you have smaller sheets of Yupo. I like to buy the bigger sheets. I find them more versatile for me personally, but there's no right or wrong. Use what you have. If you have glossy cardstock, try that. Use that and see what you do. I don't use glossy, so I can't speak to it, but I know people who do, and it's beautiful as well, so give it a go. But you don't have to complicate what you're doing the way I have done. I was trying for something a little bit different, and it didn't turn out quite the way I saw it in my head, so I'll have to ponder how I could pull off what I saw in my head, but I think that this turned out really pretty, and I just love alcohol inks and snowflakes, so there was no way for this not to turn out beautiful. But you can see that I've got the 2 1/2 inch strips on the outside and then the 3/4 of an inch strip on the inside, and that just kind of creates interesting variation. You could do it where you did like a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, and 3/4 of an inch as well, and that would look really cool, and you'd kind of just go down in size. Like I'm trying to play, because I have done a fair amount of alcohol inked snowflake cards, that I was just trying to think of a different way to, build my strips and have them be a little bit different than what I've done before. So I'm kind of playing with the measurements of how they kind of go. So keep that in mind. You don't have to do this. You could leave it in one big chunk too and not cut into strips. You do you, as Tim Holtz always says. There's no wrong way. If you are creating, you've already won, because I think it is really, really beneficial. So bust out your supplies, have a fun play. I get a lot of comments after I've created an alcohol ink video of people who are like, I have alcohol inks and I've never used them. And I'm like, oh no, you've got to give them a go. Alcohol inks are so fun. And I think they're really forgiving as well. The only thing with alcohol inks is that you do have to keep in mind your color theory, because it's not hard to create mud. So, if you brought in yellow and purple, they look beautiful together because they're complementary colors, but the minute they mix, they create brown. So you have to be a bit aware of that. But you can Google color theory and that'll break it down for you if you have any, concerns. But generally, if you stay with colors that are together, blues and purples and pinks, like I like to do, greens, you end up with something really pretty that kind of blends together. So I would suggest you give your alcohol inks a play, and keep in mind they do have a bit of a scent. I don't find it to be horrible. I can't speak to other brands, of course, because I only have the Tim Holtz ones, but I have had people tell me that they smell bad. So I guess you could open a window. We're not doing that here. Today it's like -2 so Celsius, because I'm Canadian. But yeah, so you could open a window, have a fan, that kind of thing. I generally have not found it to be a problem, but just be aware, and be conscientious of your health. So you can see that I did cut them at that 5.5 because I wanted to have a little bit of wiggle room with my strips if I wanted to change how they sat. And then now I'm just cutting off the extra in my trimmer just because it's easier. You could of course use scissors if you wanted to here. And I'm just going to cut off the excess. And then we're going to start building the card. And I think this design turned out really pretty. It's kind of simple in as much as there's not a ton going on, It's not simple when you look at it, I don't think. But I think that it's just, I'm working on my negative space. You can see that I've brought in just a really small Merry Christmas stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp that underneath the strips on the bottom right corner. It's just because I prefer the right side for my cards as a general rule. I think that to me, it just looks more visually appealing. But I'm trying to, because I am a more is more style creator, I've been trying to kind of embrace negative space a bit and be okay with, it doesn't have to have 6 million things to be pretty. And I've been trying that with some of these card designs because I want to show you guys all the things, like maybe you're not a person who wants to throw everything in the kitchen sink to the card, but you still love the style that I, create in. So I'm trying to make sure that I have a really good range of cards so that something sparks inspiration in everybody, and not that I can, inspire everybody, but I want to inspire as many people as I can. And so I try really hard to be conscientious of, different types of makers. And some people, they prefer something a lot more clean and simple or a lot more subtle. So I'm trying to do that, but still have it in my styles, vibrant colors. I think that my designs are usually really well put together. So, that kind of, I'm trying to offer as many people as I can inspiration so that they will create, because I do think it's really good for your soul to create. I think that I think in our crazy world, it's just kind of nice to sit down and make something, so hopefully you guys like this card design as much as I do. I do have some pattern papers coming out. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm working on some digital products. I'm actually working on junk journal kits as well. So don't be surprised when you see more junk journaly stuff show up on the channel so that I can showcase the stuff that I'm working on creating. But I am currently in the middle of working on a couple of different styles of pattern papers that I've, hand drawn, hand created. So look out for those if that's of interest to you. They will be on my website. The same website everybody went to download the the dome foam holders from my shaker card video. You guys would have seen that that I did last week on Monday. I promise there will be other videos as well. I do a lot of snowflakes because they really make me happy, but I do have ideas for a couple of other ones as well. And I was thinking when I was making these, I'm like, have I done too many snowflake cards already? And then I was like, oh no, I did the skates, so I have done, and then there was also the trees. So they're not all snowflakes, although quite a few of them are snowflakes. But hopefully you guys will enjoy that. And of course, if you're not making a Christmas card, put a flower where the snowflake is. Put a leaf. Put a star. There are other shapes you could bring in if Christmas was not what you were aiming for here. You could make this a birthday card and just have you could have like a little pile of gifts and cut them in vellum maybe so you can see the colors of the alcohol ink behind. There are so many ways you could transform these into what you actually need while still being inspired by the design. So hopefully that kind of, is of interest to you, so you can kind of tailor them to whatever you actually need to make. But because I know not everybody celebrates Christmas, not everybody needs Christmas cards. So I absolutely think you can tailor pretty much all of my designs to whatever it is you're actually, needing to have on hand. And of course, you can always leave the sentiment off too. Like if you recreated this and you don't need more Christmas cards, you can leave the sentiment off and add it later. Maybe put like a little happy birthday or something like that if you have someone who has a winter birthday. So just a few ideas to keep in mind if you need something, but you don't need Christmas cards. You can make these a little more versatile. Now, of course, as always, I am going to add a gem into the center of the snowflake. I don't think I can resist. It just adds such a finished look to me to add that little touch of bling. But I don't know. You could leave it off again if bling is not your thing. However, I love it. And I did stamp some little snowflakes on the inside. You're going to see them here in a second. And I kind of matched up my oxide colors. I used Worn Lipstick, Wilted Violet, and Uncharted Mariner to stamp out those little snowflakes on the inside. And they were from the Misti Frostie stamp set. But any stamps you have on hand would work for this. That's just what I used because I thought it was really cute and just added a little more of something on the inside, which is something I'm trying to do. So that is the cards I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope you'll leave me a like, leave me a comment. I had a moment there. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. And of course, we're right in the middle of the 12 Weeks of Christmas series, which is pretty exciting. If you made it all the way to the end, leave me your favorite water emoji because I think the inks kind of move like that. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.